Welcome to episode 35 of the Total Hockey Training Podcast. I am your host, Sean Skahan. And before I introduce my next guest, hey, if you like the show, give us a ranking or like it and share it because I love doing this. And you're really going to love our next guest. It's an honor to have him on. Also, Total Hockey Training, we're in our in-season phase. If you're a hockey player, young hockey player out there all across the world, and you need a strength and conditioning program, give me a shout. So, okay, my next guest, honored to have him on, like I said, is Bruce Boudreau. Bruce, how are you, pal?
Sean, I'm doing all right here. Uh, I'm watching a lot of stuff this morning about guys' first day in camps and everything else, and you sort of get nostalgic and you miss that. But for the most part, pretty good. It's like you get the same question all the time, whether it's you, whether it's me, and what do you miss most? You miss being around the guys. You
Yeah,
miss the camaraderie. Yeah, you miss being part of the team. And I think I'll miss that to the day I die. But you know what? I'm pretty happy with the way things are going, and other than coaching, and it's been a good summer.
that's great to hear. Hey, how about the guy that had 10 RBIs last night? Did you follow that?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my
I mean,
God.
he's got now 10 RBIs. He stole two bases. He went 6 for 6. He got 3 home runs, and he's only making 70 million a year. I can't believe that he's getting underpaid like that.
I know, right? Oh man, yeah, but I'm the same way. Training camp's opening up and all the buzz is going on. And yeah, I miss the camaraderie with the guys. I was thinking about it. You know, what I miss, especially with you, is like those times kind of waiting for the players to come in. You might grab a coffee and you might be hanging around telling stories. I miss those type of moments as well.
Yeah, it's when you've got your whole life is based on hockey, and I mean, for me, if you include major junior, that's over 53 years of my life. So the only stories you have are hockey stories, and besides, it's the only thing I remember. I mean, my wife could tell me something in 5 seconds, I'll forget it because as a guy, we just don't pay attention to a lot of the stuff they say. But if you tell me a hockey story, I'll remember it, or a hockey thing that went on 50 years ago. I'll remember that sure as hell.
Yeah. No. So tell us about the hockey life. I mean, tell the listeners about your background before you got into coaching.
Oh well, before I got into coaching, I was a player. I mean, I played major junior. I didn't play college, and enjoyed it, and was lucky to win 2 Canadian championships, and then went on to pro. And I played 17 years. In parts of every league that I can imagine: the NHL, the AHL, the CHL, the IHL, Europe, and I just couldn't get enough. But I was very lucky, quite frankly, Sean, is that once I knew I wasn't going to be a full-time NHL player, I figured I wanted to be a coach, and I picked up an awful lot of stuff, and I had some great coaches along the way. And I was lucky that my last year of playing, I still could have played. I'd signed for an 18th year in Fort Wayne, but a coaching job came up, so I didn't have any downtime. Whereas you're wondering, what are you going to do with your life? I mean, I went right from playing to coaching, and I thought that's really helped me a lot. I mean, because the one thing I did understand is I got to know how the players feel, and you didn't have that transition period of anything. So I mean, I knew that what happened when the good players, because I was a very successful player in the minors, not successful in the NHL. So I got to see both sides of the equation on how people felt, and the coming up and the going down in the NHL, and being cut and being a big player in the minors. And so I think that's the biggest thing that I took out of coaching, is how to treat people and to know what they were thinking, because I thought I went through every situation that could possibly happen.
That's great. And so when you were at the end of your playing career, were you thinking, hey, I want to coach when I'm done?
Yeah, I mean, I was 38 years old, so it was.
Yeah.
I knew that the end was in sight. If I had known you earlier, I might have been able to last a little bit longer, because I was having a hard time on my 38th year. The motivation to run 5 miles a day, to get out and work in the gym, was a little tougher. So, but we didn't have like many strength coaches back then. I mean, I guarantee our teams didn't have strength coaches. We didn't have really even great off ice workout programs like they do today. But when you're on 1 year contracts, the one thing about playing in the minor leagues, for anybody that's out there, when you're about 28 and the NHL deems that you're not going to be a full-time NHL player, now you get 1 year contracts. And it's tough when you have a family to live and die on 1 year contracts, because the first time you don't have a good year, you're never going to get signed again. Then you start to look and you go, what the hell, what do I do now? With me, I was lucky enough that I was pretty successful in the minor leagues as a player. And even though I was continuing to go play the next year, then that a 3 year offer came to coach, and I said, this is my best chance at getting a little bit of security in my life, and I took it. So I still missed playing, but I was really happy to be able to step in the way I did.
Well, you sure did. And let me ask you this: when you were playing, did you play for coaches that you may not have necessarily enjoyed playing for? Did you play for coaches that you love playing for? And were you able to take some of those coaches into your coaching philosophy, as like, hey, I wouldn't do it this way, or I liked how this coach did this? Were you able to formulate your own coaching philosophy?
100%. There was some coaches that I really loved. I mean, and I can go like George Armstrong. When I had him in junior, was a famous Toronto Maple Leaf captain. I took for the fact that I mean, us as players, we would have gone through brick walls for him, because he was so fair with us. Punished us when we needed to be, but patted us on the back when we needed to be. And I took that with him, and I'll go on. And I mean, I had a great coach in Roger Nielsen, who was tactical, showed the video, was very organized all the time. Andy Murray was a great coach for me in Los Angeles, because when I went to LA as an American League coach, he instilled in me the fact that I knew what I was doing. He was really complimentary in that part. So you go in as a minor league coach and you watch the NHL teams go at it, and you come away, and Andy Murray would say, you're doing it right. This is the right way. I love the way you're doing. That was great stuff. But then you had coaches that were just so physical. I mean, and so demeaning that you didn't like. I mean, I don't mention their names, but like, I mean, but there was coaches you didn't like. They didn't think did a good job, but at the same time, you pick something from them. Larry Kish, for example, I had him in Nova Scotia. Yeah, he wasn't a very good coach, but he was organized on the ice, and I loved the way he ran his practices. So I only took that from him. And you take bits and pieces out of everything. I had Doug Carpenter for 4 years, but I thought he was really a tough guy to talk to. He was from the old school, hired by Punch Imlach, but he knew what he was doing defensively, and I thought that was a great trait. So you keep that. I was one of those guys that I remember all the coaches I had, and 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 I always those guys resonated with me, the good and the bad, and I took all of those traits from everybody, and then just put my own personality into it, and I thought that's what made me become fairly successful.
I love that. I love that, because it makes me think about guys that I used to train in the NHL back in the day, such as Dan Bylsma. Like, I knew Dan was going to be a coach. He had that same transition, got sent to the minors and became like a player coach. And then Travis Green. Travis Green's a guy that I couldn't see being a coach while he was a player. So he made that transition into being a coach. So I think that's pretty neat. I love it when, I guess, the students of the game become coaches and do something after their hockey career. Um, Now, quickly about me, I worked in the NHL for 19 years, and I have one thing I'm most proud of is other than the Stanley Cup is I've only worked for 4 head coaches. And in 19 years, that's a pretty good run. And a lot of those years with you, and what I know about you is that you had the ability to help a team right away and get things going in the right direction. Maybe it took a little bit longer in Anaheim, but right from that first training camp in Minnesota, you know, it was we had a good season your first year, and that's actually my last year in Anaheim in 2015. That was a good season as well. What do you think allows you to have that much impact on organizations?
Well, I think it all depends when you come in. Like, I mean, in both the teams you're talking about, uh, I came in on losing situations. They were a losing team going nowhere. And to instill positivity, every player believes in himself a little bit, and sometimes that belief can be taken away. And when you're losing, you definitely don't have any positivity in your game at all. You think everything's negative. Anything that happens is negative. And I think one of the things my personality allowed me to do was bring in the positive and make people think they were better than they actually were. Maybe the other thing, I installed the human touch with everybody. As I think my communication skills individually with players was very good. I would talk to them, and in today's hockey world, one of the things that you have to do for a player to really listen to you and understand you they want you to listen to him too. So I mean, if you've got a player and you don't have any interest in who he's married to, what his kid situation is, any of that stuff, they're not going to take a lot of interest in what you're saying either way, positive or negative. So I mean, I would take interest in their life, and that would in turn make them take interest in what I had to say. So I think the player coach approach might have been a little bit different, but it was something that definitely worked. And I mean, you're right. The last year, I mean, in Anaheim, I thought we had two teams that could have won the Stanley Cup, and we lost out in 7 games to two teams that won the Stanley Cup. So, they were great teams, and it's not easy to win, but I I always think that what's the saying I used to have? It's the difference between a rut and a groove. Like, I mean, they're both the exact same thing, but I mean, one bounced your way and you can be a Stanley Cup winner. One bounced the other way. It turned out we weren't. But as you know, like that 7 game series against Chicago, I think we should have won the first 5 games. I mean,
Hmm.
we were by far the better team, but we didn't, and they won the cup. So same thing with LA. I thought we were the better team, but we didn't win, and those things happen. Minnesota was a great first year, and what happened in the second year was, you get different philosophies from different GMs, and or the third year especially when it started. I think Chuck Fletcher was a great human. Yeah, I'd work for him any day.
Yes.
Uh, but when they started bringing in the other Paul Fenton and Bill Guerin, I don't think they were quite the like. I mean, they didn't know me, and they wanted to change everything around from step one. And whether it was right or wrong, they're the bosses. They make the choices.
Yeah, and that unfortunately that's how it goes in that business, right?
Hmm.
It's not much you can do about that. Obviously, you talked about it. You absolutely love being at the rink. Like you love being at the rink. And I remember vividly, I don't I would only come to you if the players needed rest, if the right player came to me and said, "Hey, can you talk to Bruce and maybe we can get a day off here?" And I was always like that. Like I had my guys in the lineup that would say, "All right, this guy is never going to complain. This guy works his ass off. So if he says something to me, I got to go to Bruce." So that happened once in Minnesota, and we went on a tear. We went on a tear of like 7 in a row wins, and we had, I don't know, whatever, 14 points, and we were rolling, and like you got this itch, like No matter what, win or lose tonight, we're practicing tomorrow. Like, what I say this because you love being at the rink so much. Like, why do you love it so much?
Well, everybody has their happy place, right?
Yeah.
Um, Mine was my comfortability was being in my office or at the rink. If I was a player, I was always there. I would really piss off the trainers because I was there hours before, and I would be the last one to leave because I this was the place where I felt comfortable. And in the arena, like in my office, sometimes you know what yeah, I'm not doing anything. I might be watching video or watching something on TV, but I was in my office and I felt comfortable being there. That's why I'd go there 6:15, 6:30 every morning as
Yeah.
soon as I get up. And I keep telling people, no matter how it's a stressful job coaching, but I mean, the one thing that I used to find is even if you had a bad loss, okay, and coaches take losses harder than anybody. Players can, they sit there, they take it, they don't like it, but then they can go out and have a beer or have a bite to eat. And they know they're coming back and they have got a new day. Coaches, these things drain on you. But no matter how bad the loss, I could not wait to get on the ice the next day or get behind the bench the next day. That lure and love of the game was just has always been with me. I mean, and even when I haven't had a job, that's we watch. Me and my wife will watch every hockey game going at night, and we will read everything. We'll know the stats of everything. It's what some people do. Some people are nerds on the computer and are on the computer all day long. I just happen to love the game, love being, and probably the biggest thing is I love being around the people that were in the game because
Mhm.
most of them are really good guys. But to get to your question, it's really important for the coach to listen to the strength guy. And when you came and would say, "Hey, these guys need a day off," or "These guys are tired," or "He needs a shorter practice," and this, it's him. It was I had to, not that I didn't want to, I wanted to, but I wanted to listen to you guys because you know better than anybody in today's world when you have the heart monitors, you got things on your pads, and you can on the practice on let's just say how hard the practice is, how much energy the players have. We have to listen to you strength guys because you are such an important part of the organization. And I mean and it was apparent to me, especially when I got to Anaheim, because in Washington we didn't like I don't even know if I knew the strength guy's name because he would just come and say work out and don't work out. But when I got to Anaheim, it became really different, and we were really starting to learn the all about the technology of the sports athlete, and that's where I started to learn. It was from you.
No, that's great. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Now I want to talk about some players because obviously you coached Ovi, you coached guys like Getzy, Perry, guys in Minnesota like Stalzy and Zach and Suter and all those guys. But you always had this I guess affinity for certain players. And I would say like these guys to me were like Bruce guys. And I would say probably guys like Cogs, Matt Hendricks, David Steckel, Eric Fair too. Like, why are those guys, I would say Bruce guys? Because it's kind of funny because three of them are working in player development. Like, what did you see in those guys that I also saw that made them good team guys and all that?
Well, you mentioned four of the best that I ever had.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, uh, and when I say the best, I mean it's because sometimes it's not always the superstar. It's uh, and superstars are great, but it's the meat and the guts of the team that are the third and fourth liners and fifth and sixth defensemen that sort of keep the glue together on a team. And those guys that you mentioned, the one thing they would do anything you want. And those were the kind of guys that I would go to the wall for because they'd go to the wall for me.
Hmm.
And I mean, whether like you take Matt Hendricks, I mean, he was injured all the time, but he would never complain, and he would get out there and he would work his ass off and do whatever it took. And those are the kind of guys that you go to bat for. I remember when I first had him in the American League and in Hershey, and he had a great year for us. And then Boston signed him, and he ended up going to Colorado. And when they didn't re-sign him, I told him, I said, Matt, I said, come to camp in Washington. Just come to camp. I promise if you come to camp, I won't let you leave. And when you can do that and you keep your promise to the guy, and George McPhee was gracious enough to let me put him on the roster, and then he just took off from there. He became a great teammate. David Steckel had him in the minors, the same thing. Wasn't a great skater, but boy, he did things and he would work hard. And Cogliano was so good. I remember after my first year in Anaheim, Andrew coming up to me in our exit meeting and saying, Bruce, listen, you know what? Next year, he says, I would really like it if you gave me a role, because I played him left wing, right wing, center. I was trying to find my way that first year in Anaheim and who I had, because I came in a quarter of the way through the year. And he said, give me a role. And I gave him a role the next 3 years, and he was fabulous at it. The next year, he got 20 goals or 19, one of the two, and just excelled. And since that time, he's played. Right now, he's retired, and then now is an assistant to the general manager. And
Yeah.
he was that kind of guy. And those are the kind of guys you love to have. The Jared Spurgeons, and there's
Yes.
a reason why he's a captain. These are the kind of guys that were all team all the time, and just great people that you could sit there and go, man, if I wasn't a hockey coach, I would love to be friends with them. And that's the one thing with coaches, you can be friendly, but I don't want to get into being friends until after we're done. I just did a speaking engagement in Dallas 2 weeks ago, coordinated by a player I had in Mississippi in 1999. That then we went out to dinner, and we're now friends. But I was friendly to him when he played, but he remembered all of this stuff and phoned me up for this speaking gig, and it was pretty good.
That's awesome. And just I did see Tamo was on, I think, Spit and Chicklets, and
Yeah.
he mentioned that you guys are talking and stuff, and he has a lot of respect for you. I know you had to sit him out there against Dallas years ago, and I think that's water under the bridge too.
Well, that was a crazy situation, because Bob Murray came and told me I had to sit him out.
Yeah, I
Now, that's the
remember that.
last thing I wanted to do.
And I had to work him out.
I respect the older guys an awful lot and what they've gone through. He's 44 years old, so I end up sitting him out, and I don't tell him that it's Bob that's making me sit him out. I'm taking the hit, and he was pretty upset for a while there. And
Yeah.
I think Getzey told him a year later that, hey, that wasn't Bruce.
No.
That was all Bob Murray. And then he came back and he apologized and everything. But those are sometimes the things. I wish I was stronger in that fact and said, F you, Bob, I'm not going to sit him out. But you knew the impact as well as anybody of what Bob Murray had, and what his temper and everything like that was. And it was a playoff game. We ended up
Yeah.
winning the playoff series, even though we lost the game. I sat Tamu out. I remember telling him the next day that I would never do that again. So don't worry about it. But I think the damage had already been done. He was 44 years old at the time. He had a tremendous pride, let alone the fact that he was a first ballot Hall of Fame guy. So it was a tough thing to do, but we all have bosses too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm glad it was. I'm glad it was resolved, and I'm glad that Ryan Getzlaf told him approximately a year later that he was barking up the wrong tree. That it wasn't me that did that.
No, that's good. That's good. There's honesty there. I appreciate that. Okay, talk about Slapshot, the iconic movie that you were in. You were on that green and yellow team. What were they called again?
The Hyannisport Presidents.
Okay,
Mm.
talk
And I
about
was
that
num-
experience. Like, what
I
was that
was
like? And talk about everything. Talk about, the apartment and how, can you get into that for our listeners? I think they'd appreciate that.
Yeah, well, whatever you want. I was playing for the Minnesota Fighting Saints, and and they folded in the WHA. And so their farm club was Johnstown. And my agent said, "Hey, listen, we'll sign you with the Leafs next year. They're making a movie. Go down there." And I mean, I dumbfoundedly listened to him rather than doing what I should have done. But as it turns out, I don't know if the year playing, finishing the season in Oklahoma City or going to another WHA team would have been memorable. But the fact that I was in the movie Slapshot has been memorable 48 years later. So, I mean, um, a lot of great things happened there while I was in it. You got to see the actors, you get to meet people. You met Paul Newman, talk to him. I mean, they used my apartment for Paul Newman's apartment, which was, pretty unique. Just being around those guys, and it's funny, like when Vancouver let me go, and I hadn't talked to a lot of these actors in 40 plus years. I got phone calls from three of them.
Really?
Yeah, that saying, "Hey, listen, we're sorry. You got a raw deal there, this, that, and the other thing." But I thought it was just so neat hearing from, I think it was Alan Reynolds and Jerry Hauser, and I forget the other one, but I heard from another one too. So all of those guys evidently remembered me from the movie, but it was a camaraderie thing, and it was great to see how Hollywood movies are made and to understand a little bit. But what an iconic movie! The
Yeah.
thing that is strange about that is that everybody thought it was so far fetched, but it wasn't that far fetched at all. It was Nancy Dowd was the screenwriter, and she wrote it as a thesis. Her brother played for Johnstown, Ned Dowd, and he played the part of Ogie Oglethorpe, by the way, if you're ever watching the movie. And he brought it to George. She brought it to George Roy Hill. Said, "Hey, this is pretty cool." They flew out to Johnstown and hung out with the team for a couple weeks, and then the next thing you know, there's being a movie being made there. So it was awesome.
That is phenomenal. It's yeah, you still, if it's still on the TV today, you just can't shut it off. It's like
No,
Braveheart or
there's not a
Gladiator for
12.
me.
Yeah, there's not a 12-year-old hockey player in the world that hasn't watched that movie.
They're not supposed to, but they do. That's awesome. Now, I was laughing my nuts off a couple months ago. I saw a picture of you and Crystal at a wrestling event, front row.
Oh yeah,
It's like
I'll be there again on the 28th, probably in the same seat. But I got to meet Kevin Owens, who I've always been a big wrestling fan. Everybody knew it. I mean, from the 70s, 80s, 90s, I just followed it. Like I'm a, you can call it sports or sports entertainment, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, I'm a junkie for all those things, all sports, and wrestling was something that I got into. And Jackie Redmond, who uh, works in TNT and worked with me at the NHL Network, her and EJ Raddick, they had a surprise for me at the draft when it was in Montreal. And I met Kevin Owens. We became friends. And so when they come to Hershey, I'd text him and say, "Hey, listen, I'm coming to the thing." He'd get me front row tickets, and we had a great time doing it. I keep telling him I want to be his manager. He needs me to be his manager. I think I'd be pretty cool at that. So, but the it's a sport that I've got to meet quite a few of the wrestlers, find out how cool they are, and I mean, it might not mean anything to anybody else, but it's pretty cool to me.
Well, did you see Corey Perry recently?
Yes, and I texted Kevin the next day, Kevin Owens, and I said, "Kevin, you took care of my boy Corey," and he said, "Yes, I did," and
That
I
was
said, "Great
unbelievable.
guy." I said, "That was unbelievable." Yeah, exactly what I said. So he's a good old boy from Montreal, and he loves his hockey. He's got season tickets at the Canadians games. So I mean, and like I think he's as popular as any wrestler there is out there today. And I mean, wrestling has got a lot more viewership than hockey does, by the way.
Yeah.
Everybody knows wrestlers. And so, I mean, for him to love hockey, and you know what, and you go to the back room, the wrestlers, they all know about hockey. There's an awful lot of hockey fans that are
Really?
wrestlers, and I was pleasantly surprised because they're so big and strong. You can't think of them doing that, but there's so many Canadian wrestlers, from Brett the Hitman Hart, who was famous, owned a junior team in Calgary at one point, to Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, all these Canadian guys. They go to the games all the time.
Wow, that is awesome. I remember I actually worked with uh, Brock Lesnar years ago, was a wrestler at the University
Yeah.
of Minnesota, and he was on one of the teams I worked with. And then I remember seeing The Undertaker sitting in the hallway at the Honda Center one time, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's a big person."
Well, they're huge. And look at the last event that we were talking about when I was at the front row. Brock Lesnar was fighting um, somebody. Anyway, he was in the back hallway, and they had to do a scene. And this man is massive, and he
Yes.
was throwing him. It was I, I know his name. It's Cody something. I'm losing my mind a little bit. But anyway, they fought, and the size of these guys, and everybody thinks, okay, the outcomes are predetermined, and that's great. But the what they were being thrown through beer bottles and beer kegs and everything. I'm going, I would have been dead in a minute. And Cody Rhodes, he was fighting, but I mean, I'm going, this is so real, and they go through so much. For people to think that it's fake blows me away, because there's no way I could do that. And Brock Lesnar is the size of a mini truck.
Yes.
He's a huge man.
Yeah, he really is. Oh, that is unbelievable. Okay, so what are you up to now? I know, do you still own the Blue Ox? Do you have any?
I got a small percentage. We sold that when we moved to Hershey to get another team, for
Okay.
the most part. But because we started at that, and that was our first team, we wanted to keep a portion of it, and so we do. But we're not really actively involved in the running of it anymore. So we own a junior team in Hershey now, actually two in Hershey,
Okay.
and my wife is in charge of all of it, because I'm just running around the country. I'm too busy because I work for the NHL Network now, and I'm doing Caps TV, the pre and post games, and I work for TSN in Canada. So over the month, I'm probably um, doing one of those three things 15 to 17 days a month,
Wow.
and so it's a lot of traveling. You don't get a chance to see your mom or your kids too often. So I mean, all the spare time is taken for that, or being at the Cubs games here, which is our junior team. And I'm sometimes I sit down, I'm going, I'm this is crazy. I'm supposed to be sort of semi-retired, and I'm working more than when I did when I was coaching, for goodness sakes.
So you're around the game, you're and you're there. You're not a head coach right now, but if there's an organization that has a rough start and they need a quick turnaround, I just think people need to give you a call.
Well, if they did, I would answer the bell.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt, because I mean, I think till the day I die, I'll love this more than anything else. And it's it, it would be gratifying if it happened. I think I'm still capable. I still think I'm one of the better coaches that are out there. And um, but it's you need to get the call. I mean, I can't go in unless you buy a team, and I don't have anywhere near kind of money to buy a hockey team. Uh, Junior team, when it costs 25 grand, yeah, I could do that. But I mean, uh, anything else is out of my league.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Well, Bruce, we'll wrap it up there. Really good to see you, and I appreciate you coming on. Hey, I never forgot to tell you, I have your book, Gabby, and I should have had you sign it. So whenever you're around Minnesota, I'm gonna have you sign my book.
I will, and
Yeah.
yeah, you can. I'll sign the next one too, but I got to wait for a few people to
Yes.
die before I write that one, because that might not be as. The stories may be a little more graphic.
Well, I'd be first one buying that one for sure. Well, Bruce, thanks for your time, and I love you, and it's good to see you. and always great to catch up with you.
Same thing here, Sean. You have a great day. Thanks for calling me. Do this anytime for you.
All right. Thanks, buddy. See you, Bruce.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.